Hi, this is Michael Ankrah, and welcome to this episode of my podcast. And I want to start a series, and the series titled "What If Everything You Know About the Bible Is Not True?" And I know that there are a good number of people that the mere mention of religion or Bible or things of that nature is enough to make them just shut off and not want to think. And this is for good reason, because I think we live in a time that the religion, and especially Christianity and the Bible, has been abused to the extent that those who have become awakened to that realization almost say, I don't want to hear anything about this. But I think one truth about life is that everything has a role or a function in the tapestry of the universe. And I think the challenge for anyone who seeks knowledge, who seeks to know, or who seeks to find enlightenment, is to be able to come to this place where everything from every corner, when come together, makes sense. So one of the things I want to do in this episode, which will fall under what if everything in the Bible or whatever you know about the Bible is not true. The first thing I want us to tackle will be the topic of language and words. And I'd like you to think about this scenario. Assuming you gather, let's say, 20, 100 people from different parts of the world. So from all the corners of the world, go down to Australia, somewhere in between, come to Europe, Africa, Asia, all around the world. And then give them a phrase. Let's say they say, I am happy. Can anybody be certain that all these people from all these different places would have the same intention or the same thought about the phrase, I am happy? We know that this is not going to be the case, and it's for good reason, because words in themselves mean nothing. You know, one of the things I try to sort of tell people is this: human beings came before words were ever invented, and the world existed before we came into it, and then we came and invented the spoken word as we know it, as a way of communicating. So therefore, the spoken word really only represents something, an imagery, a symbol, something that we have in mind. And this idea is something that various religions, or even science for that matter, tend to agree on, because many people don't want to hear the word God, for instance. But then if I say to you that leave the word God and try to represent to me, what do you intend to portray? What do you intend to communicate when you say God? Because people use the word God in so many different phrases, and especially in this time of Corona, you hear a lot of people say, God is going to see you through, God is this and God is that. And then some people will even have the expression, oh my God, and we hear that in so many different scenarios. But the question is, what do people intend to communicate? Somebody may be in a passionate moment, and within that time, they just express, oh my God, and sometimes you find people who don't actually call themselves believers, or they don't believe in anything, but they still use that expression, God. So in this case, what does God represent? And if we take away the word or the language, what sort of intention, thought do we try to communicate when we ever invoke the sound God? or things of that ilk. Or for instance, if the scientists, quantum physicists say the electromagnetic field, or you go into another situation where they talk of sorcerers, and sorcerers simply means people who go to the source. And bear in mind that scientists are also talking about the fact that, there is a source of all things, which is the electromagnetic field. So, what does God mean to you? And I'll give you a second to think about this. It doesn't matter what you believe, whether you call yourself a Christian, a Muslim, or a Buddhist, or whether you don't believe in religion and you call yourself a scientist. One thing that everything that I have read so far, from quantum physics, from reading the Tao Te Ching and the Bible and many other things, agree on one fact, that the source of all things, the source of all creation, is an indescribable, unquantifiable, intangible element. Quantum physicists refer to the electromagnetic field. They talk of the field. And then when you read the Bible in Genesis 1:1, it also talks of, in the beginning, the Spirit was hovering above the waters. So that if you take away the characterization, when they've tried to put the Spirit of God into a frame and call it God, if you take that away and imagine that thing which is hovering above the waters, and then the scientist is also talking about a wave from which the ripple generates matter, I believe, from my understanding, that we are not talking about different things. And then when I read the book, The Alchemist, and when the young man went around and everything, and when he finally met the alchemist, it was profound to understand the role of alchemy. And basically, alchemy is where you are able to turn any material or any metal into gold. But I think that is just a metaphoric representation of spirituality, because what is spirituality? And I'm often very quick to remind some of my fellow, because especially when you come from the part of the world that I come from, Ghana to be precise, when people talk of spirituality or they refer to anything of spirit, they often tend to think of some magical stuff. But I think spirituality has a clear definition, and spirituality is synonymous to alchemy. And when you become, or it's just like when you become enlightened, as the Buddhists or others will say. And basically what it means is that you have come to this place in life where everything makes sense. For the alchemist, any metal you can turn into gold. And for an enlightened person, or for a spiritually awakened person, you see the meaning or the relevance of everything in the tapestry, of the world. Because everything, one of my favorite things which I believe so strongly, is that the world has been made perfect. And what is shocking is that sometimes Christians, people who say they believe in the Bible, have got all the answers in there, but somehow they buy into a perverted, if you like, interpretation of the Bible. Because, like I said, what if everything you know about the Bible is not true? And it is not true because what we have tried to do, or what we tend to do, is often to get fixated on the words and try to, put our own understanding or interpretation of what we currently understand of the word. So, for instance, if you say the word prayer today, can anyone suggest that when somebody says pray, today, it means the same as prayer for somebody who, let's say, said that 2,000 years ago. So if you translate your understanding or your interpretation of anything into the words that you see in any document called the Tao Te Ching, or any of the teachings of the masters, or any of these books, if you translate your understanding of the word rather than going into yourself to say, what is the intention behind this word? And this is something that you can only get in your consciousness. You go deep into yourself, and from there you'll be able to seek inspiration, because we don't have witnesses to come from 2,000 years ago to tell us that when we said A, we actually meant this, or when we said so, what we meant was this. But then you can, when you get into that point where you are able to weed off all the noise, and the fact is that what people don't tend to recognize is that by the time we all grow up, we become so conditioned and so ingrained with the teachings and understanding of everything that people expect us to accept. We go to school to be further conditioned into some of these things. So what we think we know is actually what we don't know. So you will be told that this is history, but then it is just a selection of what somebody has chosen to tell you, and most of the time it's just a skewed representation of events, and it doesn't represent the full picture. So to be able to get into the meaning or the intention of what people are saying requires a lot of introspection and going into yourself and trying to operate from your consciousness rather than operating from your unconscious self, which is your flesh. Because most of the things that we do, and that's the first video that I did when I talk of two minds, the flesh, which the Bible also talks about, is a very powerful brain. And so it is very easy to be operating from that point where you are operating on autopilot, and therefore you are more like operating on a living dead. You just see this and you quickly respond as that. And I tend to see that a lot when I watch movies, and you see people who say, oh, he did this, he left the toilet seat up. So, well, it's not supposed to be up. Says who? But we come to accept these things, live by them, and so we are controlled by them, and literally we are held captive. And that is the way in which words have come to affect everything, because I've asked many people this question many times. What do you mean by fun? And people, for the first time, I see them pause and go into themselves and think, oh, okay, yeah, what do I mean when I said I'm having fun? Because more often than not, when we say we are having fun, or when people say they are having fun, what they are actually doing is doing what they have been told that this is fun, or when you do this, you are having fun. Not because they themselves have any internal connection or emotional connection, but they just think they are doing what they have been told to do. And therefore, what you often find is that people will book the expensive trip, go on the holiday, they get the high whilst they are there, and the moment the holiday is over, for instance, board the plane and they land back in the airport, what happens? The reality comes running back, and therefore everything has been just an illusion. And if that were the case, then really you can create your holiday without having to pack a suitcase or move a foot. You just lie in your bed, go into yourself, go into a deep meditation, and imagine yourself being on holiday and doing all the fun things, and your body is just going to feel exactly the same. But again, this is a battle, a competition between our brains, and it is often not easy for most, because you have lived your life, learned this, practiced this, and believed that this is it. Another word that people often misunderstand, and I always like to hammer in on that, is like the word love. What does it mean? What is love? And for most people, the definition and the imagery they have of the word love is the depiction that has been cast by Hollywood. So what they see in movies as the expression of love, as somebody buying flowers or somebody giving one a hug or another person giving a kiss or something, that is their definition of love. But is it really? Because I always tell people that I was brought up by my grandmother, who never once hugged me or kissed me on the cheek. That's not what we do. But I have no doubt in my mind, not a shadow of doubt, about her utmost love for me and care. And I know she will lay everything on the line for me. So when people get hung up, or people, couples who get into deep problems and, sometimes even lead to breakup because somebody has not done something, say it is a Valentine's Day or something, and you haven't done what Hollywood says you should do: buy the chocolates, book the restaurant, do those things to show you love. And we can only weed ourselves off of these things when we are able to accept some simple facts. And the first fact is this: that we don't know any of the things that we think we know. And I don't care whether you call yourself a scientist or you call yourself a believer of the Bible or anything. We don't know. And scientists have said as much with the quantum theory, because nobody can define what the electromagnetic field is. And I've been reading and watching videos on that, and there are people who are trying to put some mathematical equation to capture the quantum mechanics, but in the end they are using some probabilities, and it's also fuzzy and confusing. But that is just buttressing the fact that nobody knows anything enough to think that we have all the answers. So when I say that, what if everything you think you know about the Bible is not true? It is coming from actually a very humble premise, a premise which is challenging you to let go of everything that you've had, everything that you've been told about what things mean, who is God. Because if you go into the Bible, when Moses had the encounter with the Spirit of God, when he was going to meet the Pharaoh, he asked the Spirit, when they asked me, what is your name? What should I say is your name? And the response was simple. He says, I am that I am. And the simple translation for me is that God is anything. God is in everything. Anything or everything that is ever created possesses the Spirit of God. And there is no if, and, or but. And then the question that I tend to ask people when, I get so many random quotations about God is going to do this, I say, where is God going to come from? So in effect, your understanding, and one of the things that I have said in my book and my current book that I'm working on, the title, What If Everything That You Know About the Bible Is Not? One of the things that I have said is simply this. I believe in God, except that I don't believe in the God that many people preach in church, the God that you hear is only going to bless you after you've paid some money. I don't believe in that God that is waiting for disasters like the coronavirus to happen and then to come in later riding a white horse with a shiny silver beard to come and save mankind after all the destruction, because that is not true of the Bible. That is not true of the nature of God. And those things are just a representation of the way that people will want to represent God from their own understanding. So then one may ask, who is God? And nobody can put a final answer on that, in the same way that scientists are not able to capture the quantum field or the electromagnetic field in the calculation. But what you are able to do is always to be able to describe this God spirit from whatever field of life. And if these are true and not based on anybody's personal pigeonholing of the concept, you would realize that everything will align. Because I say that if you want to see God, you look at nature, and the sun has been there, the wind is there, the field, the gases around the earth, in the earth, they are all there. All these things perform their function without judgment. And so, if you want to find the Spirit of God, and you have to enable it, it is always this quiet voice that lives inside of you. Because what spoken word has done to all of mankind is that it has actually diminished or silenced the unspoken word. And so if you operate from knowledge, the spoken word, then you are operating from the flesh. And that is a fleeting knowledge, because it is based on very shallow foundation. But if you are operating from your consciousness, and you are operating from your intention, and your intention is actually your unspoken word. So, for instance, before you embark on marriage, if you want to marry and you want to marry from your intention, then you would have taken time to deliberate, form an image or a picture of what sort of man, husband do I want to be? What sort of wife do I want to be? How do we intend to live? And these things are not spoken. You spend time within yourself, and over time you will be able to crystallize and clearly form an intention. That is the unspoken word. And the thing is, this particular thing that I just described is actually captured in the Bible in John 1:1, because it says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was what? Was God. It was there before everything was made, and there was nothing which was ever made without it. So that before even any spoken word was uttered, the intention must be clear. And so before God will come, as it says in Genesis, that let there be light, that is just our human interpretation of the matter that was created after the intention became manifest. But the actual word was not spoken. So if we want to live in our consciousness, then we have to be able to develop the ability to quieten all the noise that comes around us. Because if you are not able to silence or cut off everything that we have fed into our frontal lobe, where we have all the answers, the interpretation, which says that, when you hear the sound, that could mean danger, or when, where we operate on survival. If we can quiet all that and just go into our consciousness and try to connect with our source, and it is possible, not out of some magic or anything, but it's just about deep meditation and going into a place where you feel at one, you feel connected with nature, you feel the vibration coming from your body and actually connecting to another frequency which is outside of your body. And this is all a capability within us, but it is something that you can activate when you are able to get rid of a lot of the things which we have been naturally conditioned to accept as if that is the way, but they are not. So I need, and I'm going to implore you to just be open to this series. So if you call yourself a Christian, do not be put off by the title of "What if everything you know about the Bible is not true?" I am not saying that the Bible is not true. I am just saying to you that what if everything you know about the Bible is not true? Because you see, if you think about it, the slave trader was able to use the Bible to justify slavery. You and I sit here today and we think that that was cruel. But think of it for a moment. Slaves sat there and were still listening to Bible preaching, Bible passages from their slave masters, and they sat there in obedience. So what do you believe today about Malachi, about having to give or part with your money, or to go and give your money to some pastor? What if the idea that your pastor should be flying a jet, or should be living like an oligarch, or should be doing this, whilst you are scraping the barrel? What if all those things that you've been told, what if all those things are not true? What if God is not waiting for you to come and pay him some money before he blesses you, but then God actually lives inside you? Because this is actually in the Bible, even though you are not being told that. What if the message that you have been told, the judgment that your pastor is making on you, is actually the very thing that the Bible describes as a sin? And rather than you being told that when you do this, it's a sin, and when you do that, it's not a sin. Because I'm going to, within this series, and using the words of Jesus, bring you home that sin in and of itself is not an act, but it is an intention. We operate from our intention. So that, and just a little illustration, that is why if a baby through throwing their hands or whatever slaps you in the face, you don't take it that they have actually gone out of their way to harm you. You know that they are just operating in their consciousness, and within that you got hit. But then if you just say that if somebody hits you in the face, that is a sin, then that must also be a sin. So there is a lot of learning, but I think we will gain a lot if we are able to come to this humble place to say that we don't know. And so let us all embark on this journey to find out, what if what we know is not true? And what if we now get on this journey to say, what did the Bible mean when it says the Garden of Eden, or the original sin, or eating of the fruit of knowledge of evil? If we can humble ourselves and go back to our source and begin to seek answers, we are going to find the answers all around us. And that is what this is about. So to sum this up, I'll just say, let us not be encumbered by words. Let us not be encumbered by what you believe about the Bible, but rather open yourself up to saying that, okay, maybe I don't know, and there's a lot out there for me to find out. And if we come at learning this thing, if we come at these series from this point of view, I believe together we are all going to grow, and who knows, maybe we might be spiritually developed. So thank you very much, and I shall